So today I'm going to talk to you about how getting out of your normal routine and your super structured, disciplined schedule and actually doing something out of the ordinary and spontaneous, unplanned can actually be good for you. So before we begin, my name is Michael and I help young men in their early 20s start to learn how to use their free time a little bit better and make it feel a little bit more purposeful with the stuff they're doing. So I just got back from a trip to Chicago, Illinois, and this trip was totally unplanned. The morning of, I didn't, like the morning when I woke up, I didn't know I was going there, but it was like the morning went along a little bit, and I just had this idea. I just had this like picture in my mind of like taking a random trip. And if you don't know my story, I don't currently have a full-time job right now. I'm really trying to focus on like building as an entrepreneur and really growing this as my full-time work. So, I didn't have anywhere to sort of report to the next few days. And I was like, what if I just take a random trip? And I started to entertain the thought a little bit. And for some reason, the picture of Chicago, Illinois. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States. And the picture of Chicago, Illinois was very clear in my mind. And for some reason, I just trusted that. It was like sometimes we have these pictures in our head, or we have these, like, I want to say callings, and we just sort of like ignore them. It's like, oh, that'd be a dumb idea to just go to Chicago, Illinois right now. Like, I have to stay and do my work. I have to stay and stick to my routine. But the more I thought about it, I was like, that would actually be sick if I had just booked a hotel today and went on a spontaneous trip. I've never done anything like that. And especially me, as a guy who is very structured and I don't like doing anything unplanned. Like, there are points in my life where I write out every single hour of the day and I know what I'm doing every single hour of the day. And if something conflicts with that, I don't want to do that conflicting thing. I want to stick to my schedule. So that's how I normally am. But like, I guess there was a calling to do something different and I trusted it. So I ended up booking the hotel and I ended up like telling my sisters. I thought they were going to think I was crazy for just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Chicago, Illinois today." But they ended up supporting it. So that was nice. Like I didn't have to have that feeling of like they're judging me or anything. But I ended up going and I drove down there and I learned a lot. I learned a lot on this spur of the moment trip. Like I said, I didn't know I was going there until literally I had that idea mid-morning. And it was weird how I visualized that, sort of felt this like calling to go there, and I did it. So it was cool. Like I learned a lot because of that, because I trusted that sort of like intuition feeling. And so that's what I want to talk about is how something like this, when you trust your intuition a little bit, or you do things a little bit more spur of the moment. Some people might call it impulsive, or you can call it spontaneous. But the more we can do things like this, the more like lively we feel. And what I'm learning is that when we can do things that make us feel more lively, we feel more connected to this world. Like we think a thought or we have this calling, the thought would be to go to Chicago, for example, or the call that would be the calling. And then the sooner we can do it, it's like we're more connected from our thoughts to reality, if that makes sense. And speaking of connection, when I was on this trip, I learned that the biggest thing for me is that by living in these disciplined routines and being super structured, that's all I was focused on. That was my only connection to this world. There was no other connection to my family. There was no other connection to my friends. And so I guess I was in a period where I wasn't feeling like lively or I was ignoring like these other areas of my life that needed connection. So as a young man with a big goal, or really anybody with a big goal, we do need to have structure and we do need to stay consistent and we do need to be disciplined, but it also can't hurt to have periods where we do things spur of the moment and we live a little bit more because like I said, what this does is it makes you feel a little bit more connected to the world and a little bit more lively. So, what I learned from the Chicago trip is that I can I can do things like go to restaurants that I want to. I can do things like eat foods that I haven't eaten in a while. I can do things like go to these random like towers and like visit places I've never been before. And I even ended up going on a boat trip, like a boat tour around the city. Like you, and that wasn't even planned. Usually I wouldn't do these like unplanned things, but now that I did it, I realized that we need to we need to stop like living a world in our heads. The faster we can have these thoughts about like what's possible and like the faster we can get these thoughts of like visualizations into reality, the better. Hopefully that makes sense. Like for example, if I visualized that I wanted to go on a boat trip, or like if I visualized like if I was walking in Chicago and I saw a boat, like a ferry boat driving around, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. the faster I can actually like do that and turn it into reality, the better. Because it's more of a connection from your like mind to the world. So that's one big thing that getting out of your routine can do is it sort of gets you out of your head and it gives you more of like an actual like physical connection to the world. Another thing I learned is that when you do things out of the ordinary, you end up learning a lot. I learned probably the most I've ever learned in my life during this trip. I learned the things that are actually important, which are our relationships and being a good person to the people around me and having more of like a connection to the people around me. That's more important than money. It's more important than having a successful business, at least for me. And it all sort of like intertwines. Like if you have this strong connection to the people around you, then you're more motivated to do better in business. But it all stems from like good relationships and it stems from having the confidence that you have people around you that you can rely on. So that was one big thing I learned by just going on a spontaneous trip. And yeah, the other thing I learned is that it's okay to get out of our routine sometimes. It's okay to like live a little bit more unplanned. Yeah, it's good to think out all the possibilities of the decisions we make. And I actually speak on that a lot, like think about every single possibility of each decision. And so if I did that before I went to Chicago, I would have thought I would have thought out all the positives of going to Chicago and I would have thought about all the negatives. And if I really spent time having that debate in my mind, I might not have even gone. So like it got rid of the overthinking and it